Good afternoon. I am speaking here as for two organizations, Laban ng Masa, of which I am the national chairperson, and also as a member of a board of the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights. It's a bit difficult to come after Professor Richard Fox, since he's been recognized as one of the leading specialists in international law. He has also been a victim of lawfare. He was the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Palestinian rights, and he was never allowed by Israel to enter Palestine. And of course, as you can see, he is in very perfect health. Professor Falk is 89 years old, and he still plays tennis every day. So I will not spend much time here, since the speakers on the panel have so much more to say about lawfare than me. I just wanted to share a few thoughts that are more political, psychological than legal in nature. That is, I will touch on the psychological warfare that has been waged against Senator De Lima. I was wondering why at the beginning of Senator Lila's current odyssey, there were not more people who stood up for her. I think I would attribute this to what I termed elsewhere as Duterte's blitzkrieg fascism. While on the ground level, Duterte's panzers, or tanks, rolled over barangays, indiscriminately killing people, at the national level, Duterte and his minions, like the abominably ambitious or simply abominable Richard Gordon, focused their massive firepower on Senator Lila. Both at the ground level and at national level, the aim of Duterte's panzers was to demonstrate the power of the administration to do anything it wanted and communicate that resistance was futile. True, the persecution of Senator Lila was to Duterte partly a settling of personal scores, the guys getting back at her for daring to investigate him for the Davao Death Squad killings. But probably more important, it was a campaign undertaken for what social psychologists would call its demonstration effect on the citizenry. Let me just share my thoughts on two of Duterte's blitzkrieg methods that proved so effective. One was the blatantly misogynistic line of attack, characterizing Senator Lila as, quote, an immoral woman, unquote. This was, in a very real sense, a witch hunt, a drive to paint this particular woman who had the gall to stand up to the omnipotent patriarch as the source of all society's evils. One must admit that it was a stroke of evil genius to dredge up Jurassic Age prejudices against women, the primordial worry about women leading men astray, that primeval fear that Freud called castration anxiety, and to link these male psychological terrors to the legal accusations that Senator Lila was a high-level enabler of the drug trade. Related to this misogynistic psychostrategy was the sheer effrontery of the effort to paint a former Secretary of Justice as being at the center of the country's illegal drugs problem. This panzer punch was so bold that it stunned people, and among many of those who did not know Senator Lila, it made them question their initial common sense or instinctive reaction that the accusation was false, utterly false. Now, those of us who knew Senator De Lima and had worked with her and had known firsthand her determination to combat injustice knew the accusations were nonsense. I had the opportunity to work with her briefly in pursuing cases against government officials abroad who were treating our OFWs as sexual prey when I was head of the House Representatives Committee on Overseas Workers' Affairs. And I was thoroughly impressed with her commitment to rectifying injustice. But for those who had not had the chance to work with her, the Panzer punch was so outrageously bold that it psychologically destabilized them and made them question their initial reaction to dismiss the charges against Senator Laila as absurd. Now, those who did not know Senator Laila could perhaps be excused for being stunned by the lies of the president and his minions. And I am sure the good senator will not take this against them. But there were others who knew better, but were so worried that the same public crucifixion would happen to them that they remained silent or did not come out to defend her as strongly as they should have. I mention this not to make anyone feel guilty, but so we can understand why, despite their being fueled by falsehoods, Duterte's blitzkrieg tactics have been so effective in stunning people into inaction. But 3 years on, the Panzerists have run out of fuel. The Blitz has lost its punch. The testimony of drug lords who are willing to admit to anything to escape the full force of the law is ridiculed and dismissed even by many pro-Duterte people. The prosecution is having a hell of a time trying to construct a case that would not be ripped apart or ripped to shreds during the first hours in court. Judge after judge has declined to hear the case because their reputations will be forever sullied by the image of them having presided over a kangaroo court. For them, the sight of septuagenarian Supreme Court justices hobbling towards the sunset, utterly discredited to their allowing themselves to become tools of a presidential whim and prejudice, that image, as most of them did in the case of Chief Justice Serrano, is a fate to be avoided at all costs. But most important, people are coming forward to bear witness to a grave injustice. I know several people who now make it a point to bring up Senator Laila's case with other people whenever the occasion presents itself. Let me quote one acquaintance here. Quote, "Whenever I ride a taxi these days, I make it a point to engage drivers on the political situation. And one of the things I talk to them about is the frame-up of Senator De Lima," unquote. Surely, slowly but surely, the tide is turning, if it has not already turned. I'm supposed to provide suggestions on what to do to advance Senator Laila's release. The legal suggestions I will leave up to our eminent lawyers. I will just mention non-legal initiatives. Bringing up the case of Senator Laila whenever we can, like my friend does with all sorts of people and in all sorts of occasions, is one way of spreading the truth. And with many of us doing this consciously as in a chain letter, this can work wonders. I just wanted to tell you that I spent part of the year in a country where things are not allowed to be said on the mass media or in newspapers about what is going on within a royal family. But I can tell you that whatever happens in the royal family, less than a day later, everyone in the country knows about it, and it is far faster than social media or newspapers. So basically, telling our friends and them telling their friends, etc., about what is happening is really a way of spreading the truth that is not to be underestimated. Then there is bringing up her case to friends and followers in social media. Of course, you'll get responses from the usual trolls. But from my experience over time, this level off while yeses and positive comments become more common. Let's just be thick-skinned and ignore the trolls. And from my experience, they trail off. Except, of course, in some cases, like that of Chair Chito Gascon, who provides a living for hundreds of trolls who are tasked with no other job than to watch and attack him day in and day out. For educators, Senator Laila is a profile in courage that deserves to be taught in civics classes to our students, even at the elementary level. For those of us who do a lot of public speaking, there is always a way to connect Senator Laila's case to your topic without it having the appearance of being pilit, even when you're talking about, say, globalization, social development, or the craziness of Donald Trump. Then there is the Free Laila Committee. It is simply waiting to be turned from a network into a mass movement, hindi ho ba? And perhaps it is this forum that will trigger this transformation. Perhaps at the highest rung of these modes of resistance is the Law Solidarity Hunger Strike, where hundreds, if not thousands, can join the center in fasting for her release, following the example of Benigno Aquino. The second, let us, however, have no illusions about the road ahead of us. Again, let me say that the key obstacle that needs to be surmounted is probably not legal, but psychological in nature. Even when they no longer believe in the charges against Senator Laila, many people may still be unwilling to acknowledge this even to themselves. On this phenomenon, let me offer the insights of Senator Laila herself in an interview I did with her when I posed the question of why Duterte remained so popular. And this is her answer. Quote, "That is the misconception we have about democracy. People feel invested in the person they supported, and they do not want to believe that he is capable of destroying an innocent human being, because if they admit that, they believe that they also have to admit they made the wrong choice. I think people aren't yet prepared for that dose of reality," unquote. Despite such obstacles, Senator Laila, the country's leading political prisoner, is confident that ultimately the truth will prevail. Since this is a symposium on lawfare, allow me to end by continuing to invoke the imagery of warfare. Though they were pummeled horribly for years by Hitler's panzers, through sheer will to preserve, the Russians turned the tide and their own tanks rolled all the way to Berlin. 3 years in jail have not broken Senator Laila. 10 more years won't break her. She perseveres in her belief in her ultimate vindication and in her trust that we are the instruments of that vindication, her avenging angels, if you will. Let us prove ourselves worthy of that trust. Thank you very much.